and then put it in this big industrial grinder that Pete owns and brought into the church to use, ground all the pork up into the sausage, then took that ground pork product, put it into this big industrial mixer, which Pete also owns, and took the spices, which Pete had mixed up himself in his garage, and poured those into the pork to make the sausage spicy. And out it comes. We would take that and put it into a third machine that Pete owns, which takes the sausage and puts it into the links. So we did all that. I helped, Joe Raudebush helped, Ralph Mosser helped, Ray Heinerman helped, some others helped, but we didn't know what we were doing. Pete had to show us how to do everything. Pete did that, and then, so Pete was in charge of about 90% of the sausage and 100% of the sauerkraut. Pete did. So could you give Pete a hand? Tonight's guest speaker, we're pleased and fortunate and blessed to have Luke Witte. Luke was a standout player at Marlington High School in Alliance, Ohio, where he scored over 1,500 points during his career. He went on to The Ohio State University, where as a sophomore in 1971, he led the team in rebounds, 331 for the season, and was named All Big Ten. The Ohio State team were Buckeye co-champions, and he teamed with fellow Buckeye standouts Alan Hornacek and Jim Clemens. Witte was selected in the fourth round of the 1973 NBA draft by the Cleveland Cavaliers. Following his career in professional basketball, Luke Witte established his own sporting store in Alliance, Ohio, which he operated for more than 5 years before becoming a minister. Luke Witte is now the Carolinas Division Director with Marketplace Chaplains in Charlotte, North Carolina. Would you give a warm Chapel and Marlboro welcome to Luke Witte?
There we go. Is that better? I'll just have to talk really loud. That's all I can say tonight. Well, I was going to say, Rob, you know, that isn't too bad. There was one time that I remember that I was in church, and I was sitting in the pews. This is before I was a pastor, and the pastor was starting his sermon. Or actually, he was already into his sermon, and then he said, reading from Luke, and I said, yes. This was nothing about being embarrassed. That was really embarrassing, so because I was really paying attention. So I need to have you all pay attention tonight. But it is really, I know all speakers come up and say it's really great to be here, but when you have the opportunity to come home and just see so many people that you have had experiences with through your life and have poured their lives into your life. I'm just so appreciative of being able to be here. I just want to thank Joel, too, for inviting me. This is my second time coming to speak at the sausage and sauerkraut dinner. And Pete, next time we're coming to your house, so you don't have to haul all that stuff over here. This is a lot of work, you know, so I would think we'd all just show up. You have room for a couple hundred people, I'm sure. Wanted to start this evening. I had an opportunity a couple months ago to come back to Ohio and speak at a men's challenge for an organization that really helps men that are coming out of incarceration and their reinsurgence back into society by giving them an opportunity to learn how to fill out applications, how to go for job interviews, just being able to operate in a society and a societal setting where they can be a positive back into the communities that they're going to live in. But anyways, I was asked to come and speak to that group, and I want to share with you some of the things that I shared with that group just a few months ago. because I think it is important for us to realize, especially for us as men, that there are challenges that we are all going to be facing. There was a man by the name of Daniel Eugene Rudinger, and I don't know if anybody ever has heard that name before or can relate who that person was. But you probably don't, because the realization is that he grew up in Joliet, Illinois. He was one of 14 children from a steel factory worker, and his dad worked for the steel foundry, and most of his brothers did as he was growing up. And as he got older, he also went to the foundry to work. Hot job, and you know, I know that some of you know what that's like. I can remember in Alliance when the steel foundries were up, and you know, they were cranking out steel, and a lot of good things were happening. The economy was really good, but those are hard jobs, and they're hot jobs. But he had this dream to play college football. Problem was, he had a couple things going against him. He was 5'0", and he weighed about 150 pounds, dripping wet. He was a very poor student. He was dyslexic. I can't even say that word, but it means you transpose letters, I suppose, or transpose words. But he just really had a very difficult time with school. So when he was done, he went into the steel factory, and there was a situation that happened while he was working there where a friend of his was killed in the foundry. And he goes, you know what, I've got to do something better. I've got to get an education. And so he kept after his dream. I think a lot of you will say, you know, that sounds a little on the familiar side. It sounds like it could make a great movie. Well, it did, because Daniel Eugene's nickname was Rudy. And they made a movie out of Rudy's life. They made a movie out of it because here was a young man that, with his tenacity and just his overwhelming enthusiasm of just going after life to the fullest, got him to a situation where he had to go to a junior college first, and just to get enough grades and get his a cum up so that he could go into Notre Dame, which was his favorite school and the only school that he ever wanted to play with, and the only school that he ever wanted to be at, and the only school that he ever wanted to be involved in, the only school he ever rooted for was Notre Dame, and that's where he wanted to go. So he had to go to Holy Cross, which is across the street, a small junior college from the Notre Dame campus. And he worked really hard trying to get his grades in, and he put in application after application. Rejection after rejection came. He must have put in half a dozen or even more applications to try to get into the school. And each time he got this rejection. One day he gets a letter after an application and kind of puts it on his side, and you know, I just know what this is going to be. Sat down on his bed, and he opens it up. And they said, we want to congratulate you. You have been accepted to Notre Dame. Now he has an opportunity to be a student there. But more than anything, he wanted to play football there. So here's this 5'0", 150-pound soaking wet guy that is going to Notre Dame, and he wants to play football. Well, he can't do that. It's impossible. His whole family and all his friends just thought he was absolutely insane, thought he was crazy to even think about this kind of opportunity. It's not going to happen. You're too little. You're a runt. You're dyslexic. You can't read. You have a problem with education. How are you going to understand plays? But he put everything into it. And he made it to the practice squad. And I know that what we called that when I was playing basketball at Ohio State, we had a practice squad, and we called them the practice dummies. I think that was probably a little wrong to do that, but that's what we called them, the practice dummies. These guys that just went in there and they stuck their nose in it, and then they tried to block us out, and they tried to run some offenses, but you know what? They were the guys that we worked on, and we just tried to run plays, and they were just there to kind of help us get a good workout. But Rudy kept after it. Every time they went to practice, and you guys saw the movie, I'm pretty sure. Every time he went to practice, he put absolutely everything into it. He was ready for action. Every time that ball snapped, he would go after it. He'd get knocked down. He would get shoved down. He would just get knocked off his feet. Came away with injuries and limping almost every practice. 2 years. And every Friday afternoon, he would go to the coach's office and he would read a list on who's going to be dressing for that game. No, 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 no. And then that day came, the final game, his senior year. Senior game, there's only one opportunity. They're playing at home. It's the senior day. All the parents are going to be there. And he goes up, and it's got to be today or it's never. No is the answer. If you saw the movie, the captain of the team came in the coach's office and he laid his jersey down and he said, I want Rudy to wear it. Coach says, you got to be kidding. We can't have Rudy start. Next player comes in, lays his jersey down. I want Rudy to play. He has given us everything. People were on that team and stayed on that team because they watched the energy and the endeavor and the intensity and the tenacity with which Rudy played, and they wanted him to be a part of that last game senior year. Coach gave up and said, okay, put him in a uniform. Rudy was so excited, called his parents. I'm going to be on the team. I'm going to be on the sidelines. Well, the team let him, the team said, lead us out. And Rudy led them out of the tunnel. The last game, senior day, their last home game. That must have been extremely exciting for him. And he went out and it got down to the end of the game. Team fans started yelling, Rudy, Rudy, and he got in the game. And he made it into the history books, not just the book that he was going to letter or he was going to be on that team, but he got into the history book, the only player in Notre Dame history to ever be carried off the field. You know, and I watched that movie, and it was interesting. I watched that movie just before I came up to speak to the Men's Challenge group. And I went, you know, why do I like this? Why do we as men like to watch this kind of game? And I think there's a couple reasons. I think the first thing is that we like to root for the underdog. We like the guy that he just doesn't have anything, and he's just there, and you want to go, yeah, that's the guy I want to root for. But you know, we're the same way with teams. We like the underdogs. We like the Cinderella teams coming into the tournaments and let them have an opportunity to finally make a name for themselves. And so that's something that is exciting. I also think there's a respect that we have for within our heart and soul for those people that do anything they can to achieve anything they can ethically and morally to achieve. There's also a part of us that go, you know, I like the idea of the glamour. I like the idea of, you know, here's Rudy being carried off the field. I think we would all like to have that at some point in our life. You know, look what he did. You know, we're going to boost him up on our shoulders and we're going to carry him off the field. There's that recognition too. You know, maybe it's your name in the paper or a picture in the paper or whatever it is. There's that opportunity that men see, and probably a lot of women too. But I think there's something deeper than that. And I think for me that there is a hope that what we do has meaning. I think deep down in us, when we root for that underdog, or we watch a movie like this, or we see something in real life, that there's that hope inside of us that what we do has meaning, that what we do matters to somebody else. You know, as a husband and a father, I think that myself. You know, I want things to matter. You know, even little things that I do, maybe clean off the table or make sure that that the garage is cleaned up or whatever it is, small thing, I want that to matter. And I want it to mean something, even as small as it may be. The scripture I want to use tonight comes from 1 Corinthians 9, 24 through 27. Do you know that the race, there are all runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get that prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get the crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that lasts forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after all I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified from the prize. Paul writes this to the Corinthians, and I think there's something interesting. There's a lot of sarcasm as he starts this out. When he says, here we go. Do not run. Do you not know that in a race all runners run? I mean, duh. It's a race. They're supposed to run. They're supposed to compete. They're supposed to go after it. And guess what? This is a race. And the other thing is, we're all in a race. We're all in a race. We're in the human race. And God expects us to run well. He expects us to run well. Yes, it's the focus. It's a focus on the prize. It's the runner and it's the finish line that we're looking at. It's a sprint. We do not swerve from side to side. The mechanics of pumping your arms and legs, it is a rhythm. One time when I was at Ohio State, and a lot of times during the summer, we would train at the Ohio Stadium. What a great place to train. Most of the time there were guys all over the field and girls, and the volleyball team was up there running the steps, and the baseball team was working out doing some things, and there's a weight room underneath. And so there's a lot of people out there working out. And so this one day I was out with a guy by the name of Dave Sorensen, who was a center at Ohio State a little bit before I was. And Dave and I were out doing 40-yard sprints. And we're right on the football field and got it marked off, 40 yards. And we go, go, and we'd take off. And he'd beat me. We'd walk back to the goal line, 40-yard sprint, go. He'd beat me again. I don't know how many times this happened, but he kept beating me. David is about 6'10", probably about the same weight that I was at that time too. But there was a guy up in the stands who was a fraternity brother of ours, and Forrest was a decathlon player. And he had watched us for a while, and they came down, and he said, Luke, he said, I want you to do something. He said, when you're running, he said, I want you to go like you're picking your nose. Go figure. Runners pick your nose? I thought, on your blocks. Anyway, he said, go up, and every time you're moving your arms, I want you to go just like you're picking your nose. And I thought I must have been swinging my arms all over the place, like flailing down the field or something. But he said, keep your arms tight and pick your nose. I thought, boy, that's such a little thing. I said, I was thinking that. I didn't say it to him. I don't think that could work. But I thought, what the heck, David's beat me 6 times in a row. I better try it. Take off, and I beat him. We run again. I beat him again. Small thing, small mechanics, but it's a training. There's strict training. You don't cheat. You run with integrity. You're a student of the game. It was interesting, this afternoon I had an opportunity to go out to Marlington High School, and even though school was canceled, they invited they had all the guys and the girls basketball team and the boys basketball team come, and they did practice. And so I had an opportunity to sit down with them for a few minutes. And I talked to them about training, and I talked to them about a bunch of other things. But one of the stories I told them, I said, there's a vision that you have when you're looking at a team aspect. There's a vision that you have for your life. There's something that you focus in, and you try to have clarity in your life in the direction that you're going. It's just the same as the scripture. Run a race. Don't run aimlessly. Don't go here and there. You have a goal. You have a thing that you're focused on. You have a vision, and you want to shoot for that vision. And I said, it was my freshman year of high school. And it was so interesting because there was that moment that the light bulb came on, that there was actually 9 other people on the court other than me. You're supposed to laugh at that. I thought it was kind of... It's a little narcissistic in my thinking, I think, at 15 years old. But what I just realized, the whole floor opened up to me. And I went, you know what? I get it. I can see the plays happening. I can see what the defenses are trying to do. I see how they're trying to push us down one side of the court. I can see how we can open up. I can see with just a little block, a pick and a roll and going to the hoop. And it was this revelation that I have in the sports arena that this actually is a team sport. And if we all focus on the same thing, we can get to that goal line. We can get to the thing that we're focused on. We can get to our vision. We can get to the goal that we've established as a team. And it was a tremendous revelation for me. But I think it's so important for us, that we just don't meander through life aimlessly. Because, it is so easy to do that. We're like that ship out on the sea. We just get thrown from wave to wave. We have no rudder. Nothing to point us into a direction. And when you think about it, there is this huge ship on the ocean. Huge. Take the size of this room, take the size of this building, even bigger. And they're steering it with a thing that's about this big. It's amazing. But getting it in the right direction. But sometimes, so many times rather, as men, we go rudderless. And we don't realize we have a direction, we have a purpose, we have a meaning. And that's the meaning, that's the thing that's in our hearts that say, this matters. What we do matters and can make a huge difference in the way we think and the things that we do. Train, do not run like someone running aimlessly. Paul switches gears in the middle of this and he says, the trophies, the rings, the titles, the banners, the stadiums, the arena, the MVPs, the news clippings, they're all going to perish. They are not going to mean a thing. I have 2 chests in our basement that I probably haven't opened in 15 years. And there are trophies in there. MVP trophies, best rebounder trophies, I don't know what all, but just filled with trophies. I know the last time I looked, they were a little bent up, things started breaking, and now there's pieces, and it's going to perish. There's a movie clip that I just love, and it comes from the Field of Dreams. And I know I'm going to movies a lot, but I just love the visualization that some people put together with these movies. And you start understanding things when you can visualize it. For me, I'm a very visual person, and if I can see it done, I can go, I can do that. I can read instruction books all day long and still don't know it's a refrigerator. But there was a scene in that movie where there was a player, and his name was Archibald Moonlight Graham. And there was a time that he was trying to get in to play professional baseball. And he just didn't make it. He didn't quite get up to bat. It was like the Rudy that didn't make it to the game. And he was asked by Ray, said, 50 years ago, for 5 minutes, you came within this much. You came this close. And Ray said to him, he says, I would have killed for an opportunity to get so close to that dream and not touch it. God, what a tragedy. And Doc Graham said, son, if I had only gotten to be a doctor for 5 minutes, now that would be a tragedy. These things that we do as young men, these things that we try to accomplish as middle-aged men, these things that we try to reminisce and elevate and embellish in our own heads as old men, are really not what it's about. It's what you do as you pour your life into others, as you move through life. as you pour into your sons, as you pour into your families, as you pour into those that are around you, that pour into who God has brought you to sit in front of. Those are the important factors. Moonlight Graham is going, you know what? I could have had a pro degree. I could have played professional baseball. You know, yeah, I got that close. But God had a better plan for me. And it would have been a tragedy if I had spent my life trying to be something that I really didn't need to be. Trying to be something that embellishes my life. I know for me, I said, I'm always a lot better player than in my mind than I ever really was. And what a tragedy to get stuck there. Don't get stuck. Because it is about our life in Christ. It is about the same kind of disciplines that Paul is writing about in this race that he's going to run. He wants to make sure that we're focused. He wants to make sure that we have a goal and vision. He wants to make sure that we're training the way we need to be training. And so many times, it's a training in our heads. There's so many times when I sit with another person and I pray for them. And I said, just pray for everything that we do. Pray for everything that we say. But more importantly, pray for everything that we think. Because, man, this is a jungle up here, and it's a disastrous jungle that can lead you into lots and lots of problems. I think when I see men and I talk to them, and I've spent a lot of years counseling, and I think one of the most serious and the most prevalent problems I see is pornography. And the problem with pornography is that men can attach that into their heads, that clamps down. It's a searing inside their skulls of the things they visually see on those computer screens and in those magazines. And it's a disease just as bad as alcohol or drug addiction, because it takes away from their productivity. It takes away from who they are. It takes away from who God wants them to be. Be in a situation where you can be accountable, that you can be vulnerable, that you let your spouse, you let your wife, you let your family, that you can lay your phone down or you can leave your computer or laptop open and go take a look at anything that I've ever looked at. Take a look at anything I've ever seen. We have to be that vulnerable. How are we going to raise up the next generation? If we're not vulnerable, if we're not men of integrity, if we're not men that are not open to being able to be seen for who we really are. And you know, sometimes that is really hard to do. I mean, there are times I know that my wife will say, you know what, you get really angry. Yeah, I get really angry. But you know what? I've got to be open to that. I've got to be able to train myself. I've got to be able to say, you know what? That's something I deal with. And I want to be a better man than that. I want to be a man of moral character. I want to be a man of integrity. Help me to be able to walk through those situations. Help me to kind of have the kind of self-control that I need to be a man of Christ. Men, we all have challenges before us. And it's a challenge today to be in our society. It's a challenge as men, it's a challenge as husbands, it's a challenge as fathers, it's a challenge as sons, uncles, and neighbors. This does not mean we will not have setbacks. It doesn't mean that we will not have challenges. It means that through those setbacks and through those challenges, that we use those situations, those times in our lives where we are able to be sharpened and to be corrected, and to use those times as useful tools to be positive role models in our lives. You know, and I see teens out there, I see young men out there, I see so many different age groups, and it's good to see that. But you know what? We will have challenges. Peter tells us, there are going to be those situations. There are going to be those circumstances. We are going to struggle. I think a lot of you have and last time I was up, I talked about the challenges I had in college with the Minnesota situation and having that situation happen where I was pretty beat up at the end of that game. 27 stitches on my face, scratch cornea, cauliflower ear, missing a couple weeks of basketball season, and then the mental things that were going on afterwards. It's a story that I don't tell very often, but my senior year at Ohio State, I started off really with a bad season. I just wasn't playing well. There was probably some times that you just didn't even want to be there. The game for me had been somewhat ruined. It had been tarnished. And I felt like I just didn't really want to compete. And the thing of it is, it was showing up on the court. Because I'm a firm believer is what you stick in your mind is what's exactly going to be out of your head, out of your lips, or your actions. And so as I was going through all this, it was seen not only by my teammates, it was also seen by my coaches, but it was also seen by the fans that came to watch Ohio State play. So we went through the preseason, we're just starting into the Big Ten season, and we're playing Michigan. Of course, anytime you mention Michigan, that's a big game, right? So we're playing Michigan at our home place, and before the game, I was told I am not starting. The only game that I didn't start, not because of an injury, at Ohio State. And I was hurt. I wanted to play. I wanted to be out there on the floor, even though my mind was not there, even though my head wasn't there, even though I wasn't getting, the thing from my head to my body saying, you really need to compete, you really need to try hard, you really need to work at the game. And the game starts. We go through the first 10 minutes, second 10 minutes, second half, still sitting on the bench. Second half starts and we're a couple minutes into it and we're behind probably, I think, double digits behind University of Michigan. Something you just don't want to do. It's just one of those things. You just don't want to lose to Michigan. And so get into, I think there was like 16, 17 minutes left in the second half. Fred Taylor calls Luke, wants me to go in. And I start taking off my warm-up pants. St. John Area, 13,900 people, and they all started booing. And I sat back down. And Fred got up, and he knelt in front of me, and he said, Luke, he said, if you quit this now, you'll quit everything in your life. Don't quit now. I would love to say that I got in the game and we came back and we beat Michigan. I got in the game and we came back pretty close, but we still lost to them. When we stumble, we need to get back up, men. We're going through lives, men, and with skinned up knees and skinned up elbows and skinned up chins. And there's going to be these challenges. There's going to be these times we're going to stumble, but we need to get back up. When we fail, we need to try harder. When we lose, we need to seek a better game plan. When we are humiliated, we got to get back in the game. When there is a void, we need to lead with the strength and the grace of Christ Jesus. We need to man up. I am so convinced, very convinced, that because we are not taking our positions as men seriously, that in our communities, in our society, in our nation, we are suffering because men are not stepping up to the plate being the men that they need to be. We are failing at this. Our grade card looks horrible. You know, I'm not saying this, you know, because my niece is here and we've got some other women, but I'm not saying this in a setting where I'm going, you know, I'm trying to be sexist on this. But the reality is, we are called biblically to be men that lead spiritually. And if we don't do that, our societies and our cultures are going to fail horribly. And I don't want to see us swing down. If we lead like Ephesians 5 men, like Paul asked us to be, not to be mandators, not to be manipulators, not to be people that just say, okay, you're a subordinate and you need to do everything that I want you to do. It's being man up and saying, you know what, stand beside me, come alongside me, my spouse, and let's lead together. But I am taking the spiritual lead. I am taking this by the horns. I want us to be a strong family unit. I want our kids to see how we resolve conflict in our relationship. I want our kids to see that we work together, that when we talk about finances, it's a mutual understanding, that we work together and we have a positive understanding of where we're going because we have a goal and a focus and we have yoked together positively. And that's the direction that we want to go. We want to be leaders. Leaders are persuaders. They're encouragers. I said yesterday morning that it is easier to encourage, it is so much easier to encourage than it is to discourage. It's so much easier to say, man, that was really a good job. It's so much easier to your coworker to just say, man, I really appreciate you helping me out with this. It's so much easier to say to your sons and your daughters, you know, gosh, I really appreciate how you're helping out around the house. Or even, you know, it would be really nice if you did this, and your mom and I would really appreciate this. Encouraging. To be discouraging, it's hard. You have to get the anger up. You have to get the rile up. And you beat down. That is not what being a man up is. Being an encourager. Be influencers. Do not be manipulators. Do not have a plan of action. You know, if I do this, I can make her do that. I can make my kids do that. I can make my parents do that. I can make my coworkers do that. I can make my teammates do that. Persuaders build cooperation. They know how to build unity within their households, within their teams. To be able to have a situation where you build this cooperation and you unify rather than produce discord and misguided feelings and suspicion. It's building that cooperation. We're able to consult with others. We seek advice from wise counsel. We look for other people that have been down the path. You know, there's the Paul Barnabas setting in Timothy where you always have the situation where you're looking towards the opportunity to pour your life into somebody else. That's what Paul did with Timothy, always pouring his life out to him and Titus, and just, you know, making sure that they were encouraged and making sure they were learning things. Give life away. And I love it when we have those kinds of opportunities to share and pay it forward, so to speak. To teach. To take the time and the energy to sit down. To lead by example. Be your prayer that people will see that your walk is real, that your faith is genuine, and that your trust is earned. Leading by example is something that is so hard. You know, there's times that actually this happened just a couple months ago. I was on the phone leaving a voice message for one of my team leaders, and I was leaving the phone message. I was saying, okay, David, I will meet you at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. And then I went, idiot. And I said, I am so sorry. This guy just pulled in front of me. And on the voicemail, he's listening to it. I'll meet you at 9 o'clock, idiot. Okay, I'm sorry, David. I'm moving on. But that's going to happen. But make sure that you're aware of it and you don't continue on. Make sure that you know when you're stepping off the pathway and you get yourself nudged. Have people around you that are going to nudge you to get the compass point focused back to north. Seek others' perspective. It's not just about your way or the highway. Get other people's perspective. Help them, let them help you to understand more fully. I mean, there's so many times I go, how can this, even in ministry, things get really messed up. Actually, in ministry, things get messed up a lot. when you have these people working for you, and you go, okay, well, why is this happening? Why is this setting? But just ask the questions. What's the perspective here? Rather than saying, you know what, you didn't do this, and you better do this. To me, that's not good leadership. I like the idea of servant leadership. I like the idea about talent-based leadership. How did Christ show his leadership? By kneeling in front of his disciples and washing their feet, caring, encouraging, and being a servant leader. We need to realize, too, that there are different directions for different people. It's like I hear these people say, I treat everybody the same. I want everything the same. Well, you know what? People don't learn the same. They don't understand the same. A couple of years ago, well, it's actually more than a couple of years ago, how many remember a guy by the name of Ted Stepien? He got a little bit of rumble through the crowd. Yeah, Ted Stepien. Ted Stepien was the second or maybe the third owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the original owner, Nick Milletti, had sold it to his cousin, and then somehow or other it got to Ted Stefien's hands. So anyway, Ted Stepien has a ball club, and Ted was really an interesting guy. He said, let's go up on Terminal Tower and let's have a baseball throw, and he's throwing baseballs off the tower. By the time they hit the ground, they're going 360 miles an hour, and somebody's trying to catch it, and they have a big hole in their hand. Those kinds of things. He just didn't. It seemed like a good idea at the time for him, but things just don't always turn out the way for him. So anyway, he hires his coaching staff, and having a horrible year. And out of the blue, I get a call from the Cavaliers' office, and they said, Mr. Stepien would like to meet you for breakfast or lunch. So we set up a time, and I sat down with him, and I don't know why he was looking for my counsel on this. I took it at the time as being a real positive, but he's just trying to search. And he asked me this question. He says, what does it take to be a good coach? And I said, I'd never been asked that question before. I was still a very young man. I was probably only about 30 years old at the time. But he said, and I said to him, you need to be a father, you need to be a mother, you need to be a priest, you need to be a counselor, you need to be a statistician. You need to have so many different gifts as a leader and as a coach, because not every individual is the same. And you need to be able to know how to work with this person, not manipulate him, but work with this person and then work with this. You need to know what the gifts are of that person, how that person learns, how that person is encouraged. There's a thing out there called the five love languages. Some people love to have that hug. Their love language is physical touch. Some people like notes. Some people like gifts. Some people like quality time. And we all have a gift or a way we love and receive love. And we usually give away the way we want to be loved. And so I didn't know about that book at that time. Actually, the book hadn't been written at that time. But I knew at that time that people have different ways of accepting one another. And as a coach, you need to figure out how that person feels acceptance, how that person feels love. As a father, you need to know how each one of your children knows and responds to love and how to work with them. We need to have vision. Vision is just a hard thing sometimes because we get myopic. We get caught up in our own little worlds. We get caught up in our own problems. We get caught up in those financial situations where we go, I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet. I can't even think out here. I have no time to vision cast. I have no time to even realize what's going on in the rest of the world because my problems right here are just affecting me and they're right in front of me and they're a stumbling block. And I can't move forward. Vision is thinking big. Vision is going, you know what? I think this will be able to happen. This building right here did not come because of somebody looking down and being myopic about what they thought. Why in the world would you build a sanctuary this big in Marlboro, Ohio that has 350 people? You do it with vision. You do it with a field of dreams. Build it and they will come. It's interesting. I was talking with my brother this morning, and I said, this is so wild, because I was thinking about this as we were having breakfast, and I said, years ago, and I believe I was a sophomore in high school, and I couldn't drive, or I didn't have a car at that time, and I was being brought home by one of the assistant coaches. And coming from Marlington High School out to Marlboro, in fact, my mom's house is right down Osborne here. You can see her house from the front of the church. And so anyway, we're on our way home. And I remember telling that coach, I said, you know what? I think we can go undefeated next year. And I remember him stopping on Beach Street and Marlboro Avenue, and him turning to me and he said, that's really hard. And, love this guy to death, but I think he was trying to go, don't dream too big because you don't want to get hurt because your dreams may not come true. But the reality is, you've got to dream big. You got to have, when you're sitting as a team and you go, what do I want out of this year? Maybe it won't be to go undefeated. Maybe it will be, let's try to work as a team. Let's try to have unity. Let's be on the same page. Let's have the understanding that we have a full focus and we understand what everybody's role is. And we'll continue to get better because we know our roles and we know our responsibilities. But I remember just thinking about that, that was kind of crushed. Because I want this. I want the team to want it. I want the community to want it. I want to have that atmosphere where people feel the guidance and we're going in one direction. And not only just the team, but the school and the whole community can go behind you and go, yeah, we got to focus. We got a team. We can go forward. Thankfully, he was wrong. Clear objectives. Get that aha moment. Making sure that they're clear and understanding. And the last thing I want to bring up is the trustworthiness. Sitting in a counseling office and working with couples, one of the things I say to couples over and over is, you know what? You need to build the trust in relationship. And the only way to build trust is to give a promise and keep that promise. Give a promise, keep a promise. As men, we look at all these things that are before us. And I've thrown a lot of ideas out here. I've thrown a lot of things out. And I've talked about a lot of things. And you may go home tonight and say, you know what, I'm going to be a much better husband. I'm going to be a much better dad. I'm going to be a much better grandfather. I'm going to be a much better son. I'm going to be a much better neighbor. I'm going to be a much better team worker. I want to be a team player. And it may only last for till tomorrow morning. But I don't want that to happen for you. I want you to think about the things that I've talked about tonight. You know, I think about these things so much because when you're in ministry, you run into these situations over and over and over again. You know, I do not like that morning when I get that phone call and I drive to a parent's home where their son's just jumped off a 485 bridge and took his own life the night before. I don't want to do that. I want us to be encouragers. I want us to stop the flow of things that are happening. I want us to be men that will man up and be the leaders that we need to be leaders that will lead gracefully, that will strive for unity, that will love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and mind. I want us to be men that will change the face of our communities, change the face of our society, change the face of our nation. Because there is a lot of work for us to do. A few years ago, I read this book, Fatherless America, and it scared me to death. The fathers are not there. But you know what? You are. We're going to man up or sit down. Father God, thank you so much for this opportunity. Father, I thank you that we are able to come together as men and just eat some sauerkraut and sausage and mashed potatoes and green beans and sit down and have fellowship with one another. But Father, help us to be able to sharpen one another. Help us to be men that visualize a world where things are run smoothly, where we can man up and start being productive leaders. To lead spiritually, to lead with gentleness, to lead with grace. To not be these domineering men, but to be leaders that love you and are willing to lay down their life for you. For with that, we will see that we can change the world. And we pray these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Luke. Before we dismiss tonight, I do have one announcement to make. We have some leftover sausage and some leftover sauerkraut down in the kitchen. So if you'd like to take some sausage or sauerkraut or both home with you tonight, you can go down to the kitchen and for a donation.